But when y'all gave me the go ahead.
I know, my 10-year-old is like, that Admiral guy is back at it, and he was this time, and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, someone was posting like, I was like, did he actually stop?
Baru fucking killed it. Did you guys see him in the category ratings for that? He basically locked down the Darkest Dungeon 2 category for like the entirety of the release stuff.
Because it's always logged X hours, and I was thinking, wait, how many hours has the game been out? How is that possible? Is there a time limit? What's going on?
Yeah, I don't need sleep. I don't need sleep at all.
Man, I admire that. I wish I had that gene.
So there were a few things I did want to get like a chance to ask, like, what made you take Darkest Dungeon 2 in like this sort of direction? Because you definitely could have just made another like Darkest Dungeon 1.
All right, I was gonna say this is a softball question, but I think this is actually a very reasonable question because they didn't do that, and I'm actually really excited to hear this answer because I think this says a lot about the integrity of the gaming company.
Where it's like you have the Hamlet, you level up, everything's normal, but instead you kind of went for more this fast-paced combat to combat and more of a roguelike approach.
Yeah, I mean, there was no...
It's not faster paced in my opinion, and there was plenty of combat to combat in the first one too, so it's kind of weird to characterize it that way. The difference in this is not the combat encounters. The combat encounters are actually probably the most similar portion of it. You have left to right movement locked and movement targeted skills. It's a weird question because I don't think that's quite accurate.
One reason why we did it, and we certainly talked about doing, you know, a sequel where, you know, the whole thing is in this huge city, and instead of a hamlet, it's a city, and, you know, these sort of more direct inherited sequels. So we investigated that, and we talked through the pros and cons, and ultimately I think we wanted to make something that would kind of excite and challenge us so that we didn't feel like we just had to sink another 3-4 years into trying to recreate and sort of one up in every category the game we'd already made, and we didn't want to create a game that was a competitor for the game that we'd already made. Like, we love Darkest Dungeon. We don't want to rob from Darkest Dungeon's fan base by making Darkest Dungeon 2. So I mean, that was kind of the framework of the discussions we had, and that's kind of what led us down this road.
Yeah, there's like...
Is it possible to watch this at 1.0 speed, chat? Like, that was on the slow side of what I want to watch. If we move it down to 1 speed, does it just feel like you're crawling through mud?
A couple factors where, you know, we're big fans of, like, I know Chris and I both really like, say, The Witcher, and it's cool that Witcher 2 is bigger than Witcher 1, and Witcher 3 just was bigger than that, you know, and that works, I think, when you're also scaling your studio massively, and you just want to be able to, like, redouble down on what you did before, but even better. And that's not necessarily, like, Red Hook's big thing is, like, always to be bigger. It's more like we want to do something really memorable. And I think that, like, we did some really fun DLCs. I mean, I say fun to develop. Like, we actually had a lot of fun making the Crimson Cord and Color Madness, and then, of course, the little...
I was going to say, other people might not see that as
yeah,
fun.
oh my gosh.
We had fun.
I'm one of the people, wow, that I can't watch at 2.0 speed because I talk too fast for 2.0 speed. So I feel like I'm doing you all a favor by basically being at 1.5 speed for all of my life. So it helps you for viewing experience.
Though, is watching people not have fun.
I rage quit off Crimson Court DLC.
Yeah, we
the
went
very
a little,
first time fighting the Baron.
Yeah.
Sometimes the croc is what sends people off right away. But yeah, we went a little crazy with all that. But the thing is, it's like, if we sat down and just tried to make more like DD1, then in some ways it would have felt like just making a big DLC, which is not bad. But I think to get ourselves interested too, we wanted to kind of
Make it
see
feel
what
fresh
other...
and not like it's just an expansion pack.
Yeah, and each of those DLCs was fun for the same reason. So I mean, really, the game Dungeon 2 being the game that it is just sort of like a continuation of our internal way of thinking. You know, we wanted to make a super challenging, huge prequel-esque add-on to the first game with Crimson Court, and then we were all exhausted. So we did a small, like, wouldn't it be fun to do this like single character, but we plussed it up with some extra enemies and then nightmare fights, and that was really enjoyable. And then we're like, okay, well, what else could we do here? We could do, you know, high score style arcade endless waves, and then after that I was like, hey, we could try even multiplayer. But each one of those things is we're trying something different, and I think that's really important for us.
I really like that approach by and large, and it's interesting. I hadn't even thought about the expansions being put in that context, but I like the idea that devs aren't burning out on redoing the same thing again and again. Makes sense too, not to be competitive with your own product because you're trying to release more of your product and you want people to pick that up and not be like, hey, the first one was better than the second one, don't touch the second one. If the second one is transformative, that makes a lot of sense.
Philosophically, even on the team, just to have like another notch in the belt of like everything is an experience and an experiment for us. So I mean, Tyler was sitting in my basement. We talked about okay, what if we just did a larger scale DD1? What if it was like Darkest Dungeon but in the future? What if it was Darkest Dungeon in the future but you're in a tank? Isn't Brad Pitt gorgeous in Fury? Yes, he is. And back to the matter at hand. But we really like the sort of, you know, what if it's a journey? And we get a lot of questions about the 3D, and part of it was the plus up combat. But the other thing is, like, once we settled on the idea of a journey, the horizon, it becomes really important. That's like integral to the sense of destination. And so a side scroller doesn't give you the same aspirational kind of reaching that a 3D kind of environment would give you. And you know, the reason to go in-world in 3D on a coach is to limit your information so you don't get that like God perspective of just tapping on a map and arriving automatically. We wanted to kind of sell you into the experience. That's kind of our thinking anyway.
And slowly seeing like the mountain get closer and closer.
Yeah, while your guys are kind of falling apart, and I have taken road trips with children. And
Well, it'd be nice if our guys slowly did fall apart, because currently they definitely don't do that. I don't know. I get the idea of embodied movement a little bit, and certainly the camera does wonky things in the Stagecoach, mostly thinking the game has crashed because the camera is doing such weird things. But I don't hate the Stagecoach, but it also doesn't feel like an integral part of the Darkest Dungeon 2 experience for me. I want to see it. I don't want you to be able to change the controls of the Stagecoach. I want it to be clunky. I don't want it to be possible to hit all the things in there, and I want it to have more defining parts of the game. If the Stagecoach is gonna be important, and it sounds like they're trying to suggest it's important, we should make it important.
And I feel like maybe this is almost currently, as it sits live, maybe too accurate a simulator of that. But that was kind of the goal: is what happens to people when they're
Too accurate a simulator of your guys slowly falling apart as you get closer to the mountain? What was this done from, like the first 2 hours of release?
packed in the back of a car together. The same way the goal with the first game was. What happens when an army full of strangers looking for gold starts to go kind of crazy and turn on themselves?
So before I end this current fight that I'm in, this is one of the questions. Why did the Antiquarian betray us, man? He was with us.
Oh man, that's a fun. We like to. The best storylines sometimes come from these like moments that either become meme worthy or whatever. But that was kind of a fun little twist that we added that we were looking forward to everyone discovering for sure.
Focus on this game is way more on the heroes, and I always felt like if the leper was the only good hero, the Antiquarian is really the only fully selfish, evil adjacent kind of hero. So it was nice.
The Highwayman's pretty evil adjacent.
To be able to pay both of those things off in this game.
Yeah, Leper's backstory is probably one of my favorites.
And the Bounty Hunter. What are they on about?
Oh, cool, nice.
It's either that or a cultist. The dude literally solos a shambler.
And a cultist. Good point.
So the other
Wasn't the
question
point
I
they
have
made, but
with this one, because it's been asked kind of a lot since this game came out. Did anybody canonically die in Darkest Dungeon?
It's been great talking to you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we
Everyone wants the Vassal Crusader back.
I know.
I'm so surprised because of all the character classes we have. The Crusader is like the most, Crusader and Vet, they're the most bread and butter fantasy.
most bread and butter. Okay, I guess that's slightly different where I thought they were going to go with this. I thought they were going to say they're either the most boring or the most one-dimensional. And I suppose they are pretty much the most boring and one-dimensional classes in the game, the Crusader and the Vestal. So I'm not at all sad to see them go. But I guess they also are the most cookie-cutter to some degree too, I suppose.
See characters, but yeah, there's so much community love for them. But we've never said anybody died. Never said that. You haven't said that.
It's cowardly. We should just fucking pull the plug. Half of them should die each sequel. Each expansion, we should have characters dying.
Right?
I don't think so. Yeah, no, I think some of those, what's a rush for us right now too, even though we went through Darkest Dungeon, which was kind of popular right off the bat too. Like, there's a lot of people playing this game already, which is kind of terrifying, but also fun. And this is like 1 weekend early access. And so even the questions of, what other heroes are coming, all that kind of stuff, we're still keeping fairly close to our chest. As part of our master plan, and also as part of our we should probably figure that out during early access. Game development is kind of a mix of keeping your eye on the long-term horizon and having a plan, but then also sometimes you got to get to the next checkpoint. Just like those old I'm thinking of those old like coin-op racing games where you got the gas meter and you got to make the next checkpoint to keep going to the next one. And early access launch is a huge checkpoint for us, and we look forward to kind of in the Red Hook way of like theming some of our updates and rolling some of that out. But we like to keep things a little bit close to the chest until we have a very specific reason to tease or show it.
Gotcha.
We are going to add more characters.
Because the other question was, as far as like more, we already know that more characters are going to be added. Yep. We're going to focus more on like returning ones, or just focus on new stories in general? It's just like a general question.
Yeah, I think we tried to choose a cast of heroes that would cover all the roles.
We're not going to talk about things upcoming till we have a reason to do that. So let me ask you a general question about some specifics about the upcoming characters. Oh yeah, we're fine answering that.
Needed in combat, and I also gave a bias to the ones I felt like had strong and interesting origin stories, because that is a big part of the game itself. So I think that kind of thinking will continue. I want to bring forward heroes that have really compelling origin stories that we feel we can make those cool kind of mini games out of. But we also want to add to the cast. I think the
cool mini games. The origin stories are very fun to hear and to learn. I'm not calling those mini games fun or cool though. That is much more of a stretch than I believe we can afford to to use here. It's just not accurate. Those mini games are boring.
Runaway's done really well. I think she's really cool and fits in with the original group, and it would be nice to sort of surprise people with some brand new content, as well as, you know, like an updated version of kind of the old one. So the answer is we want to do both.
No, but as much as I didn't get the music one, I would argue that is maybe one of the exceptions, because all the rest of them are just kind of like one-dimensional combat mechanics of the fights that we do in and out every single time we're playing anyways, right? So in that sense, the storyline fights were actually pretty bad because they're less interesting regular fights from this game that already spams you with fights. The gestures, although they were frustrating because I didn't know what the fuck was going on, I certainly didn't feel like the game was walking me through what was going on, they were different. They were totally different than a normal fight. So that was kind of interesting.
I've likened it to like Street Fighter before, where they kind of keep the same core group, but on the edges, people come and go, and so we're kind of just adopting the same approach, really. Heroes are a huge time investment now, though.
Yeah, it's not just, you know, it's not like you could just add somebody in and you're good to go. Now you got like
the model and animation is actually the least of it. I mean, and that's no insignificant amount of work. But you know, now with 11 skills, we need all that VFX, we need all that audio, we need like 5-part backstory, we need some fights. Yeah. So you know, we're definitely gonna do it. Yeah.
It was super painful. I was just gonna say, like, our own decisions of who to make first was painful, and like I think, Chris, like you gather data from everyone on the team, then of course put your own, well, this person has to win, and I think I put in one like, look, whatever we do, please include this hero for me. But just looking at who we had to leave out so far, I mean, you know, that doesn't mean they're left out forever, was actually hard. And I think going to your original question on like why did we make the game this way, one of the things we kept coming back to was just the heroes, and we were still really pumped about the heroes that we had made, and we kind of didn't want to leave them, you know. So like it was fun to be able to bring a bunch of them forward into this game and focus on them more. So I think, you know, everyone on the team probably still has some of the original cast that they're just desperately, you know, hoping and lobbying to bring in.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to add is some heroes cost more in terms of time. So like an Abomination is two characters.
Right.
Houndmaster is like
of animations.
Yeah, so I mean, just in terms of like the other reality of game development is it is a business. It does cost money and time, and you're always short on both of those things. So there's a practical sort of set of decisions that have to get made. It's like, do we want the Houndmaster or do we want one hero and a small monster? You know, like what's going to be healthier for, you know, our immediate goal of early access launch? And, you know, don't we want as many monsters in there as possible right now?
Right.
So it's always a trade-off.
I hadn't even thought about that consideration. Makes a lot of sense when they put it that way. You are playing twice as many. There's twice as many characters for a character that transforms, which is kind of the interesting part of the Abomination, quite honestly. And with 11 skills, maybe not so relevant, but interesting to hear that. Thanks, Jedrill.
You know, and it's not like we wouldn't want to have every single hero from the first game. If I could snap my fingers,
who was the first hero that you actually decided on? That made it in, and you were like, "This is it." This is
the Highwayman, is that?
Highwayman.
I think my like
explains why that hero is so overpowered. Makes sense.
Like, I don't care how they rate on the internal polling, like the Hellion needs to go in.
Needs to go in.
Yeah.
What was that third one they said, chat? So we heard Highwayman and Hellion and what?
We love our children. It's hard to pick just one.
But it's not like I didn't know people were going to get freaked out if we had Dismas and not Reynold. I knew that. So this is everything that we're seeing. I knew this would happen, and I think that's kind of what makes it exciting. And I'm enjoying
if a Crusader helmet happens to be littered on the ground somewhere, so be it, right?
Yeah. But I think like part of the early access that was fun for us the first time was trickling stuff in and enjoying our game environment. You know, no game is perfect, and you know we've got a long way to go on Darkest Dungeon 2, but it's very fun and satisfying to be at this stage of development where, you know, we can add things and then watch people consume them and stumble on them. We can slip secrets in that don't go in the patch notes. We can, you know, all this stuff kind of makes the experience of early access kind of fun, which I feel like is what a good early access is about. You know, there's going to be days where your favorite hero is OP and other days where he gets nerfed, and that up and down, and you know that's what early access is. That's what participating in this process really means. And for us, it means we can have some fun, slip stuff in there. Maybe there'll be a Reynold helmet trinket that suddenly drops on your run one day. I don't know. Keep your eyes out.
Nice. You think it'll be adding more? You think it'll be adding like secret routes? Because like in Darkest Dungeon 1, there was like secret rooms. Is there possible like chance to scout out secret routes?
I think it's a cool idea. I think like DD1, one of the benefits of when we did DLC, this doesn't mean that wouldn't come till DLC necessarily, but is you got to build the skeleton of the game first, and then you see like how much you can keep hanging onto it. And I think that the nature of like the you know,
that's what I keep saying. I feel like the core systems of this game are really cool. The things they can do with it. I feel like all the knobs are tweaked in the wrong ways right now. So I think we need to adjust a bunch of these knobs, but it does feel that way to me when I think about this game too. I'm like, okay, these things could be cool. They could work well together with some tweaking.
The regions and the routes and driving, like we really want to pay that off in as many ways as possible. Like Chris was kind of saying, like the experience of it is important to us too. Darkest Dungeon, like how you feel while driving, but the decisions, you know, are what going to drive probably return to the gameplay. You know, like if we don't put you in interesting decisions where you're like agonized between like, oh, I really want to go left, but all my guys want to go right.
Yes, wouldn't it be nice if we had some fucking decisions right now? This is my biggest criticism of this game right now, is that nothing I do ever fucking matters whatsoever. My characters have their own like conversations, they decide what skills I can use, they give me shit every time I make a decision about what I might want to use, and all my decisions end up feeling entirely meaningless right now. It's good they're aware of that for sure.
And I think part of that is trying to play up that
And imagine agonizing right now. There's nothing to agonize over. Everything you do works out well.
whole driving in region thing as much as possible, because it really is basically like a dungeon, right? And it's nice to get this much game together and get it out, and then we can start hanging more things on it. So I think, like, yeah, we want to see basically what we can add to it.
Swear to God, chat, if you guys fuck this up for me by repeatedly claiming this game is too hard and this game does not get added difficulty to it, I will return that favor by not playing it. I'm just putting that out there. Do not fuck this up for me, because I want to play this game and I want this game to be great. And this game needs a difficulty right now.
And those sorts of things are fun, because I think, like, one thing about Darkest Dungeon that I guess drives some people crazy but is really important to us is,
I will turn that coach around and park it, and we will leave it there forever.
like, sometimes you don't have all the information. You know, it's not chess. It's got imperfect information. So that kind of stuff is, like, right up our alley as far as, you know, leaving room and breadcrumbs for discovery. Kind of like the Shambler, you know, like originally. Like, we didn't make a big deal out of it. You know, in DD1, we let people find the little thing and touch it and see what happens. So, yeah, I like the way you're thinking. Like, that stuff is very appropriate for us.
So coming over here to a Shrine of Mastery, y'all put a lot of time and effort into, like, the backstory models and characters and their animations.
When you say stress ceiling got nerfed, what are you referencing? Is there a patch out right now?
Will we be able to use those as, like, cosmetics later on? Or anything like that?
Yeah, we're working on it.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well. Yeah, we don't know when it's gonna happen, but that was always the intent. And
Patch notes in Discord. All right, we'll watch this. I'll do a patch note review after. We can do all sorts of reacting today. You guys excited? I'm excited. We'll watch the whole review, hear what they said, and then see what they put into terms, what they actually put into patch notes.
it just requires, you know, some work put in our animation pipeline. So, there you go. That's
That's a good. That's a
Exclusive
world
news.
exclusive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, we always
Thanks,
wanted that.
Ursus.
And speaking of Street Fighter, yeah, like that's the Dismas like Cody situation. Just thought it'd be cool. You could be standing in the snow on the mountain. So yeah, we're gonna work on that.
And you know, some of them just being
Yes,
outfits is cool,
Benzie.
but I love that, like, the Plague Doctor and the Leper, you know, I don't want to give any spoilers to people who haven't maybe seen you do this, whatever, but, like, you know, you really get to see totally new information about the characters in that way. And I just speaking as, like, even someone on the team, it was really cool to see the art come through on those, you know, because it's there's a sense of discovery internally too. And those hero stories, like, have been a massive investment, but Chris and I and the team have, like, they take a ton of work, but we think they're so worth it, because even if they just leave you with a moment of, like, learning more about the character, like, those are the, like, moments where it's hard to create any other way. So it's been fun for us to see people stumble on them. You know, some of them need a little work mechanically or whatever, but a lot of them are, like, playing really well, and we just love seeing the expressions when people hit that node and then see what pops up on screen and just kind of have a moment of just being stunned.
And just so people realize, like, we were very tempted to compromise on those, to cut them back for launch because of the amount of work required, and we really looked for buy-in from the team, and it was really only because of a huge, like, effort, and that means hours, really is what I'm talking about. I won't even use a euphemism, like hours and hours and hours of extra work till like 2 or 3 in the morning every night for quite a while to get this content up and running and in, just because, like, we all believed that it would add a richness to the game, and we didn't want to launch with, like, half of them done, or you could only do the first 2 fights or first 2 chapters or whatever. We really felt passionately that we had to deliver on those, and so I think it's a real credit to the team. Like, it was a great deal of work.
Definitely
I'm
adds a lot
really
more.
happy that it's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely worth it. Like, it adds so much.
Cool.
So I guess let's see. Are you able to talk at all about, like, what your end game for Darkest Dungeon 2 might be? Because, like, in Darkest Dungeon 1, like, there was a set end point.
It's a really important question, because how we evaluate where the game is at right now really, really depends on what the future chapters roll out to be, right? And there can be a couple different ways this could be. Imagine chapter 2 is just chapter 1 with different enemies, and suddenly now you only have 2 levels of skill progression. You have no armor progression. There's no roster progression, and there's no base building. That's pretty underwhelming. That's not really a particularly exciting second act to their first act. Now, if it's something different where you're expected to basically either full master your team or nearly full master your team over a couple fights, and then you're going to be rolling through different item combinations, different skill combinations to encounter much harder encounters where you have a tool set to choose from and bring into, that's going to be pretty interesting. Now, same with things like build around trinkets and build around coach upgrades. I'm really curious to see what the answer to that is, because that seems really important to me, especially if you're going to be using the same characters throughout the entire, like, 4 or 5 chapter run.
But this one's meant to be more repeatable. So we'd be going, like, an Ascension style, similar, like, Slay the Spire, where, like, you can replay the same thing but on a harder difficulty, or things like that.
Yeah, the first thing is, like, you'll notice, of course, there's only one confession in the game so far, so we have other confessions to add, so that, you know, that's already, like, you know, of course, like, quite a big variant that we hope changes, when we're done making them and implementing them, we hope like that really gives each run its own character, a sense of feeling, so that you're like, oh, we're going to the denial boss, so that means we need to be prepared for this sort of challenge. So that of course is a big thing, and that lines into like just content that we want to add. I think, yeah, like we really want to continue to cater to people who like yourself, who kind of like blow through the content and play a bunch of stuff and then look for ways to make it harder and harder to keep challenging yourself. And I think that the nature of the kind of the pure roguelike construction gives us a lot of potential there.
Damn right it does. There's so many ways to make this meta progression harder.
To do things like that, mutators. I mean, no confirmation yet, but we want to explore, challenge it runs and stuff like that. And then we also, this is a huge benefit of early access. Like we look to the community a little bit to see what they do, because I think on D1, we felt we were making a pretty hard game, and a lot of people found it was really hard. And then there's obviously a subclass of people that are just like, this is easy, okay. How can I make it harder for myself? Dark runs, snuff the torch and just wander around the dark. And so it was really fun to see what the community came up with. And I'm already, of course, seeing like people in the community.
Nah, Pierre, you got it wrong. I haven't ruined every podcast for you. All I've done is make it so you can consume more podcasts in the same amount of time.
Streamers such as yourself doing things like, hey, let's force ourselves to battle all 3 bosses on the way to the mountain, that kind of stuff. And so I think we want to do a mix of stuff that we already have planned that just works really well with roguelike construction, and also kind of see like what our most hardcores in the community are doing and enable some of that. Because I think that was our guiding principle in D1 as well. Chris and I are not huge about, strictly speaking, like difficulty modes, like easy, medium, hard. But of course we ended up with Radiant, we ended up with Stygian, but they weren't quite the same as just kind of like dialing a difficulty slider either way. It's like, different modifiers to play. And I think there's, the space is really like rich and fertile for more exploration there for sure.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier.
Although that sounds good, what they just said is the structure probably allows for that. I didn't actually hear anything that sounded like finalized plans for that. I didn't hear them be like, oh yeah, we're absolutely planning on doing ascension levels, for example. So that's both good in the sense that we have maybe a possibility for that, but it didn't sound like that was in the works yet. So it might be some time, which is less good.
Tyler, about like we have a plan, but we need buffer in the plan to see how people are playing the game so we can adapt and cater to that. So things like, I've seen a lot of people say like, hey, can we run with, just choose 2 heroes, or like I want to run one guy and see how far I get. Like all those are like really, really interesting and crazy. Yeah, just the leper. Yeah.
No more quad leper. We're really sad. Sorry, everyone. But I'm sure someone will mod the game if they haven't already to allow quad lepers.
I think people have already managed to make the Antiquarian playable
yes.
on the hero side. So
yeah, it's mind blowing. We saw that. We saw a wide miss, which is a 2-slot wide dismiss.
Wait, there's a wide miss? Bro.
it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, and we have a couple tricks up our sleeve already planned. But yeah, I think the nature of a roguelike, is that is the game value in a way, is replayability. Like even just going back to the original, net hacks, or hell, Oregon Trail, which was an influence on this game too. And so the more tools that we can eventually build, so that once you've unlocked all the hero swords, once you've seen everything, we want you to still have fun. And so I think layering those things on is where some of that will be. Obviously achievements, will help with that too. Just as a way of kind of guiding interesting play styles. Like, we had a lot of fun with that one from game 1, like get Raynald and Dismiss all the way to the end. And it was really surprising, like that what people would do. So we constantly are kind of blown away by just the dedication and creativity and problem solving by the community. It's kind of frightening sometimes, but it's fun.
But we want to keep the sand, in the sandbox nice and full for people. Like we get a lot of satisfaction from that. We want to be able to empower.
That's a weird way to put that. Keep the sand in the sandbox full. It's a really weird way to think about that analogy.
People to just like splash around and do ridiculous things that we never would have thought of.
Well, that's really nice. That was a much larger answer than I was expecting, so thank you for that.
It's definitely in our mind, let's put it that way.
Actually, that answers quite a few things that I'd already planned on asking. Oh, I did want to ask. So on the Stagecoach, there's a slot for trophies and pets. Are you able to tell us what those are? Because we can see there's a slot for them, but we don't know what they do.
I imagine they're going to be a slot for trophies and pets that are going to have some sort of influence on your characters.
Well...
Softball question. Tell us what you have planned.
We're going to add trophies and pets.
Aha!
Well,
shocking.
You heard it here.
A shocking answer from an incredibly insightful question.
First.
There we go. Because we don't have a PR. Like the reality is we don't have a PR team. Okay, so like me and Tyler started the company. Everybody's working hard over there. We don't have like a list of like slick answers, and so some of the no-go or go areas are established in real time with like nervous glances.
Yeah, we're looking at each other on the screen. Well, it's funny because we were we're preparing a patch that we're getting ready to put out this week. And
that's actually really nice.
Yeah, I don't think that's too. Hopefully, that's not. But yeah, we're definitely trying to do some stuff already. So we're literally just like working on the game. And Chris, pings me right before. He's like, "Oh, we got to do. We're doing this interview. We should probably sync up on our answers right before." And I was like, "He just started the call. I guess we're just going in. We're doing it live." So this is how it is. But yeah, I mean, trophies and pets, I think, is an interesting one because you can get in real trouble in early.
I'm so pleased to hear they don't have a PR team. I'm so fucking pleased. Like, how many companies get to do that this day and age? Actually make a product they like, not just sit to the same thing, have like no PR plan. I mean, to be fair, when I got the key Monday morning unexpectedly. So I didn't even know I was going to be streaming Monday when I got it, and that was kind of annoying, and maybe a PR plan there would have helped. But by and large, I like the fact that we can still have creative teams like that.
Early access by over broadcasting what you're going to do, because if you change your mind, it can be really, really hard on the community because they feel like they're being thrown around. But obviously we broadcast with those slots that trophies and pets are coming because we felt like we already had ideas and it was a safe bet that we wanted to carry through on that. Whereas a lot of other times we're going to be a little more stealthy. But trophies and pets are one of those things where I think originally we wanted to launch with them, but the realities of just trying to keep the game on track and get it out within a reasonable amount of time. Too early access launch just meant we said, okay, well we can, like Chris was talking about the hero stories. Well, we're not going to compromise there, but we could delay these things a little bit. And it actually worked out in our favor. I can't say exactly what, but thanks to feedback already and observing people, we had sort of a different idea of what to do with some of that. And there's another just cool example of early access. I think that it's quite a thrill ride, but there's no substitute for watching people play, and so that helps us make a better game. So this is an example where I think we got some stuff.
That's interesting. I wonder how much analytics there is for this. When they say watching people play, I wonder what they actually mean with that.
In the cooking on those ones.
Thank you, Orcspit.
Never win.
Yeah, so for instance, like pets, I want to draw some kind of cute, weird little pets, but we have to make sure they're not. They need their own design space. Like they can't just be trinkets. We can't just delete 5 trinkets and turn them into pets. And there's some considerations there to make sure that they're interesting. And so, we have to sometimes kind of take our time, but we put the hook in where if we see people, playing a certain way or wishing they could play in a certain way, sometimes that's a great opportunity to take one of these systems that we sort of had a rough spec for and fold it into a solution or an enhancement for people who are playing the game. And that's kind of our
I'm
headspace.
ready for my Eldritch Shambler little plushie.
Yeah, totally. You got a little junior Shambler in a little glass jar or something. Be sweet.
Hell yeah.
I just want Baby Jam Fetus to be my pet.
So you were talking about your studio and things. How many people are actually working on Darkest Dungeon 2? How big is the studio to give people size?
We've got about 25 core people that I'll say are a mix of employees or dedicated contractors that might live in different countries.
Wow, it's smaller than I thought it would be for a sequel of this size. It's interesting.
Or different states, whatever. And then so there's 25-ish plus our our audio, sound, composing, Wayne, Power Up Audio, Stuart, all that kind of stuff. And then our localization team, which, add on to that. But yeah, I would say there's about 25 core versus Darkest Dungeon 1. The original was made with 5 core people. So it's been a dramatic change, but really important to allow us to do the things that we wanted to do. Just scope-wise even.
Yeah.
Wow, that's...
Yeah.
I figured it was going to be larger. A lot of, the animations are just really well done.
Yeah, our animation director's very, very hardworking, very talented guy, and that's the cool thing about growing your staff a little bit is you feel like you've got. I mean, people are succeeding in adding value and polish and content to the game when you're not looking. You turn around, you see something there. It looks so cool. You get inspired and kind of, especially when we were in the sort of final 3-4 weeks before launch, everybody was working extremely hard. Passing tasks back and forth, keeping each other motivated with I just added this cool effect or. And that's a really great dynamic that we get to enjoy by having a few more specialists on the team because you can get more taken by surprise by kind of the work that they've been doing.
Yeah, and we had...
Chat, I got a meta question for you. Why the fuck is Baru playing during this?
To kind of look at also what was sustainable. I mean, and it's just you get more creativity, you get more different ideas, but you also just can accomplish more with the larger team. And I personally just really noticed it already in this compared to when DD1 launched, in this past week, with either people fixing bugs, tech support, or even starting to put changes into the game. It's a nice change from when we launched DD1, where all of a sudden we're like, oh my god, we have to do all the community management, all the tech support, and figure out how to make the game better. And we were a very, very small team.
A month, right?
Shows off the game. Yeah, possibly, I guess.
Right after we launched, because we were like, oh my god, Steam forum. Our technical artist was doing the Steam forums. It was insane. I don't know how we did that actually, but.
I mean, I'm really grateful for the bigger team now. But it's still small. I think the important thing is we don't want to have a team some of the most popular games, whatever, Destiny or something, might have 1,000 people working on them. Chris and I have zero interest in that. We really want our hands to still be on the game itself, and so it's been an interesting challenge. But I think
I've never seen these guys do an interview. I've talked to them a little bit through some of my streams, but almost always through text, and never had it real time like this. They seem like really cool guys. I'm reminded of what I like about this company by listening to them, which is a cool experience from an interview.
A good one to grow a little bit, but not grow and fundamentally change how we make games, because it's just something we never want to leave. We never want to be pushed into a point where we're just managing the people who make games.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we know some peers,
spreadsheets.
Yeah, we know peers in the industry, and that's their vector, which is great. They built a company and they want to maintain the machine that makes the games. But Tyler and I have always really wanted to keep the grease under our own nails. So we have tasks. Tyler's balancing today. He's taking time away from balancing to do this. I'm prepping concepts for monsters. We have work to do. We don't. We're not just sort of
I don't
on
think
the sidelines kind of thing.
I don't think anyone here was like thinking you're not just constantly working.
It goes with the territory. I was just trying to think of like this blur that this last week has been, because in the old days like 10 years ago, you make a game and send it off to get manufactured and then you get a break. But now it's almost like you have to be ready to tag into like turbo mode when the game releases, because now all of a sudden you're not just dealing with the potential, you're dealing with lots of people playing, hammering on it right then. So but I mean, it's a thrill. To be honest, like being buried too long in development is boring. You start going a little crazy. It's a lot more fun and terrifying when people are playing, because then you can like really change and see the results. And so we're super.
That resonates super hard as a content creator. The most fun part about recording a video is the release, seeing the people's reaction to it.
Grateful that like a lot of Darkest Dungeon 1 players have already like picked this game up. I mean, I can't believe it's been doing so well, but it's it comes with the responsibility that we really shoulder and feel is really critical. Like ultimately, we want everyone who buys the game to enjoy it, and so there's no end of work that we need to do to keep making it better.
Yeah, y'all are doing.
Yeah, with that pause is a product of playing the game simultaneously. That's multitasking. I hate that. This is one of the things that drives me nuts when I sometimes chat with Destiny, is I can sometimes hear the switching of gears of the person, and that sounds like a switching of gears to me right there on Baru, who's not parsing super clearly on what they're saying. So it messes up the continuity a little bit, and it makes me suspect that there could have been a better interview there.
Doing a really good. I'm just doing a really good job overall. Like this entire game is just, I don't know. It's very rare that like I get excited for games and it actually meets up to the expectations, and this one definitely did it. Not just for me, but for a lot of people.
Game has a lot of potential.
We're terrified, man. It's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the reason why we decided to switch up the format, was to find that like kind of development fear again. But I mean, it isn't a comfortable feeling to sort of mortgage your goodwill from a previous title onto something that we know it's different, and we know that's going to take some getting used to. And even internally, the game has to grow. Like I think people sometimes forget that like Darkest Dungeon launched with 3 dungeons, 3 bosses, 9 heroes, and all you could do was grind. Like there was no
end game, yeah.
And so we really, there's a lot more content in this early access launch and a lot more structure. But it is going to grow and it's going to mature and really coalesce its own identity is our hope over the coming like months and stuff. So
yeah, we've had a lot of people like come in like say, man, this doesn't have as nearly as much content as DD1. I'm like, did you play Darkest Dungeon 1 on launch? It had rules.
Yeah, it's a very interesting.
It's a good point. Good point about the comparison. This is a question I get asked all the time. How does Darkest Dungeon 1 compare to Darkest Dungeon 2? And I keep refusing to make that comparison because it's not a really realistic comparison. The comparison is what was early access like at Dungeon 1 compared to Darkest Dungeon 2, and what does late game, full many expansions later, many DLCs later look like comparatively. And again, I keep saying the same thing. I think the bones of this game look really good. I think they got a lot of work to do to fill the rest of to flesh out those bones, but I think it's has the potential to be really good again, which is nice. Gear switching, do you think it's a personality thing? Sure, I think some people are better at gear switching, but when you can hear those pauses, that's a failure of that for sure.
And I remember I never played Destiny at all. And then I got Destiny 2, and I was like, oh my god, it's like loot and numbers, and I have all these guns, and it blew my mind. I was having so much fun, and I was playing with a coworker, and she's like, I feel like I paid $60 for a war dog.
In skills? They already have in skills. They're called consumables.
She'd been through everything before, and I feel like it's a little bit the same where Darkest Dungeon 1 has got 3-4 DLCs, like years of work put into it, and we can't equal that effort.
And not really fair to expect them to either, which is pissing me off about the player base. Like I always maintain this when I'm reviewing games, right? Which is hold the devs accountable for the things they've done wrong and the mistakes they've made, but also try to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them the compliments where that is due as well, right? Which is you can't expect them to have completed the full release of a game with multiple DLCs later on the early access of the next game. That's not a fair expectation. It's not a fair comparison point.
Out of the gate, but we'll get there, And Destiny 2 now is like pound for pound, probably the most content-rich, certainly free-to-play or MMO-esque type game out there.
I don't know if these games are referencing Destiny or Destiny 2. I've never played either of them. My recollection of everything I've read about Destiny 2 in particular is it's a super grindy, isn't it? Like a super grindy MMO kind of deal. Seems weird to compare it to this, but I guess I'm not clearly understanding what their comparison is.
I mean, they have so many planets; they're cycling them out now. So,
yeah, there's just so
it
much
was hard
content
for us to remember. Yeah, I mean that's the thing though. Like memory is hazy, and I think ourselves, it's impossible not to compare this game in development to a completed, finished, expanded Darkest Dungeon 1, and sometimes it's hard for us to remember exactly what DD1 was like, when it launched, because again, we got the benefit of a year to work, add to it, and then refine it.
Yeah, not only just the release, but the community iterations of that. Like when you reference my Darkest Dungeon playthroughs, for example, if you're a long-term viewer of mine, you're referencing like hours and hours and hours of understanding, completing the game at its various stages, the patches that go along with that, then the self-imposed modifications on that, the community modifications on that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, the comparison point just is well mentioned here.
I mean, I think that's the thing, is like you're always surprised by early access launching in and seeing where the problems really are and what things that you thought were going to be huge problems are fine. And that's definitely true in DD2 also. And so I think, you know, Chris and I are just kind of, you know, we're natural stress balls, like going, okay, shit, you know, we got to fix this, we got to fix this, we got to add this, we got to improve this. So it's wonderful to hear that you're at least enjoying, you know, a lot of it out of the gate. To someone, you know, another content creator said, remember, this is the worst this game will ever be. And I find that really motivating, actually, just because obviously we have tried to put our best foot forward in terms of something that is worth buying right now. But man, we have a lot to do, and we're excited to do it. And it's
Pull it on the tilde. We don't have to.
Did his carriage just fall off the world? Oh.
On the what? The tilde?
if you tilde or whatever, you can your coach to the edge of the world.
I was like, is this
Take it easy.
I had to do it, Yeah. That's funny, actually. I can't see the stream right now because I'm on my iPad due to technical difficulties, so I'm just hoping it's all
Travis
going well.
gonna yell at me if I didn't do the tilde at least once during this interview.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Why tilde? Why?
Oh, because it's easy to accidentally hit?
I just don't even know why it's in there, quite frankly. We've no
Thank
use
God
for
it's in there.
Yeah, hilarious.
Yeah, you just keep going back.
Nice. You're gonna uncover the rainbow zone here if you keep going.
We'll leave that for other people to find out.
That's funny.
So, a lot of one of the big things in Darkest Dungeon 1 was your bosses. Like, people loved the boss fights and things like that, and I think y'all did a really good job with the layers. Like, the end boss in each of the layers feels like it.
I want to touch on that. I'm not so keen on the layers right now, and the immediate problem with the layers is, of course, they are too easy right now. But the second portion of that problem is that the layer structure is so different than the boss structure. I suppose in Darkest Dungeon 1, bosses were technically optional to a degree, right? But they weren't ever optional inside a run, right? So you made the decision of whether or not to go to the location, but you didn't make the decision after you got to like the boss point whether or not you were going to nope out, right? Because if you did, you failed the mission. And I feel like layers right now are really not rewarding, but really generous in your decisions. You have multiple tiers of time to decide whether or not you want to continue for that. I almost feel like if you enter the layer, you should be committed to the layer.
Each feel unique in their own way. Do you plan on adding like more bosses to each layer, or just more layers in general?
Well, we want to add more biomes. You know, when I say that, I mean like an environment, the enemy faction, and then the layer boss for that kind of zone or whatever. We didn't plan on adding 2 bosses per dungeon in Darkest Dungeon 1, but that was something where we looked at, you know, the content we had and we're like, wow, they seem to be okay just running 3 dungeons over and over again. Let's give them another reason to run those same dungeons instead of worrying about adding a 4th dungeon. So that was another good example of like an early access kind of pivot. I think given how much, you know, richness we can get out of a monster faction, I think our first move will be to probably add another region to the game proper before we sort of like double down on adding more to the ones we have. Because ultimately our goal for the game is that run to run, maybe like, you know, you don't see the same environment. So it would be great if like you do a run, you don't ever go to the city, and then the next run you do, you start in the city, but you never go to the farm or whatever.
That's interesting because, well, what are we working with right now? Is it 3 biomes? It's the Burning City, the forest, and the pasture, right? And then the mountain. So 4 biomes. They really think we're going to go through 4. What are they didn't call them chapters. What do they call them? What was the word they used? Because we should probably figure out their term. And sluice, right? True. But what were they calling the first confessions? They called them confessions. So if they think we're going to run 4 confessions without ever entering into a biome, or at least even ignoring one type of biome for those 4 confessions, that's a lot of biomes they're going to have to add, because that's a lot of things we're doing.
That will help differentiate the runs, whereas right now I think one of the weaknesses that the game has, just by virtue of being scope constrained, is that you're seeing almost everything every run, and ultimately we want to get you to a place where you have adventures in one area and you kind of forget about the other area that time, and then you return to it, and it kind of helps that feeling of freshness.
Gotcha. Because yeah, having
so that's another. If what chat's saying right now is that confession is a run, which is really interesting because that makes the scope of any given gameplay a lot smaller than I was expecting for a run. It seems weird to have multiple confessions, but then each confession be a self-contained run. Does that mean then when I start like confession number 2, I'm going to be starting with 4 fresh characters with no masteries, no items, etc.?
just more zones in general would help you, like, it'd make it feel like, okay, I can focus on just these general areas. you know.
Yeah, and you could build a team and be like, you know what, we're not going to this brawl. Like this run, I'm just going to avoid it every single time.
Yeah, we're gonna focus on fire damage.
Oh, that changes the way I've been thinking about this game then quite a bit, because I've been expecting to see as this unlocks a bit more how that fits together. If that is the case, how do I feel about it right now? I have to think about that.
So we don't want to go to this brawl ever.
Yeah, and that reinforces the different comps and the combat items you can bring with you, and really sort of starts elevating the strategic thinking. Whereas right now we're just not able to pay that out because we don't have the same kind of like content richness that we would need to get there. But that's where we're headed.
Yeah, and I think that's like a natural part of early access is, of course, adding. And I think that's a thing that we have to do a good job of messaging too, to people to remind them, because sometimes we had this on DD1 also. It was like a really unexpected, pleasant thing, but people thought the game was done at early access launch, and and just like this, it's not done. We're continuing to add. So a lot of people want to have that early access experience, but we try to remind people that, hey, if you're the type that kind of wants to wait until it's all together, it'll be there for you when you're ready. But it's super fun, to build on it, and on the bosses too. It's a lot of work went into those too, and it's some really cool creativity. And we have some plans in work to make sure that you have to see them a little more, and you can't always just necessarily scooch by. And that's kind of a typical like sort of game design thing too, where like you kind of put something in. Like we have some pretty good loot on those bosses, some really unique trinkets that you can only get from killing those bosses.
Yeah, I'm
but
actually
then
using one of them right now.
Okay, good. But if you don't know about it, you wouldn't know, and so sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to take the risk. And kind of our job too is to keep putting you in uncomfortable situations of risk reward, and that's like just so core to Darkest Dungeon as a whole. So we got a little work to do there too, so that people get to really see these bosses.
Mine is too, Flipper, but maybe not. It depends really on how they rebalance the individual confessions then. Because part of why I was kind of, but it's interesting. I have a similar initial feeling too, Flipper.
And meet them more often.
Are some of my favorite things that I've ever been a part of, making and designing. Like I love a good boss. Everybody loves a good video game boss. I mean, it's like that's why you play video games, arguably. So I'm glad to hear that the ones we've got in the layers are kind of living up to that, because I think it was a bit of a point of pride for us, certainly on the first game, where it's they all have a gimmick and you're gonna get wrecked the first time, but then kind of
my very first run, I fought the baby. That was not a good time.
But it's cool though. Like you get wrecked and you get mad, and then you come back, and then maybe you win or maybe you almost lose.
See, I think I regularly butt heads with that design idea. It's not that I don't want to get wrecked on the first time I fight a boss. I want to have the game give me the information to potentially beat something without having to lose to learn that information.
And then you're like, okay, I figured it out, and now you get to just.
Zardsky, I've seen you bring that up a second ago. I've already mentioned that I'm going to do a patch note review after this. You just need to wait.
Rush that boss, and that feeling of like that journey for a player is like very compelling.
It definitely is. I definitely enjoy it. There is one thing I did want to ask. Chat's probably gonna yell at me for like a boring question, but like, for y'all, who is your favorite like monster that y'all have added so far? Out of all the ones that you've added so far in here in the game.
One Tyler.
I'm really torn here. Well, we just talked about bosses, so I'm not going to choose a boss because that feels like low-hanging fruit.
Damn it.
This is just random, but I really like the goats. Just because they were also like pun material during development. Like we'd call them the GOAT, the greatest, then the GOAT of all time, then the greatest GOAT of all. It's just stupid shit. But I also think it's a cool mechanic, and I know that the guy the combat designer working on the monsters had a lot of fun with them. Just the idea that they create this food token, and then that can be consumed and buffs up those guys. So it's not that the GOAT is per se the most interesting, but I just love his inclusion, and he fulfills kind of a cool role. And then it's just quite startling when he like does his attacks on you too.
I like that he shoots tentacles out of his mouth and then buffs those tentacles up onto the ground, and that was just like that was just our VFX artist, just trying stuff, and it was cool to see that.
Goats are a good design because they're such an unthreatening looking creature until you actually fight them, and they're extremely threatening. And the fucking elite goat is a nightmare. So it's funny. I would have liked to hear the bosses that they were most interested in, because I think I tend to agree that the more complicated and the more impactful the creature, the more of an impact it has. Like the more impactful the creature has on your run, the more impact that player has psychologically to the player. So I would have kind of liked to have seen which of the effects which of the bosses had that effect enough that they were like proud of it. Would have been kind of cool to hear about.
But I don't know that I have a favorite. I know that our modeler
there's
hates
one
me
in there.
because
Yeah.
every faction I add like these little pieces, right? Like it's melting skin, and then we're like, we get through all the melting skin guys. We're like, okay, we're never doing that again. And I'm like, yes, but how about a million teeth? We get through that, and it's like, what about leaves everywhere?
Agree, Flipper.
He's not here right now though, so.
That's what I like too. That's why the difficulty needs to come up, because if we're gonna play and do cool things that synergize together and make interesting impacts, we need there to be some reason that those work or don't work, some defining characteristic that says, hey, that's a good comp, that's a bad comp. And if every comp works right now, there is no bad comp, right? So by default, then you can't have better comps because, I mean, you can have it be a little bit more efficient at the task they're doing, but if everything does it, there's no need.
I think mine has to probably be the drummer. I don't know, man. How hard he goes on the drums with each of his attacks,
Yeah.
it's definitely the best. I know this is like an early access, kind of like some things are going to be a little wonky balance-wise, but I'm sure y'all are going to change the fact that like Zone 3, you can have 2 little cadavers as a road fight, whereas Zone 1, you can get 2 ghouls. Where it just kind of feels a little weird on Zone 3 when you're super powered.
Why compare 2 ghouls to 2 cadavers? Is a cadaver a special unit? I thought the cadaver was just that corpse ghoul. I hear the question. The question is, you're stronger in Zone 3 than you are in Zone 1. Is it intended that Zone 1 difficulty is as high as Zone 3?
Powered up, you get thrown basic enemies.
Well,
Yeah, that's the name of the game. I mean,
yeah.
That's intended? You're joking. That means the latter half of every run is going to be boring.
There's an element of like there is some sculpting, and that's something that we'll continue to do. But a little bit of the like, you might get double ghouls. That is so Darkest Dungeon that we have a hard time doing away with that. Like that, you might get what effectively could be a run ender at just the worst possible time, and it's unfair. And that like, it's just so Darkest Dungeon. But that doesn't excuse. We're not trying to say that gives us a cavalier attitude where we don't like put attention to detail in these things or whatever. But I think like, there's kind of a time-honored tradition of that in roguelikes. I mean, even if you go back to the original like Rogue or NetHack, and sometimes you just hit a bad monster at a bad floor at a bad time in your power curve, and that was.
I'm okay with that. I like the idea that every run can end. I think that there should be some balanced decisions about where and how that presents. And I'm not sure just being like Act 3 is the same as Act 1, that's the basis of the thing, is a good enough answer, from my opinion, for how that should fit together. It's the player on average is going to be quite a bit stronger in Act 3 compared to Act 1. Shouldn't we, to keep the relative struggle intact, shouldn't Act 3 be harder? Period. Anyways, thanks K-Ray Gaming for the sub.
It's the story of that run, and you get a new headstone. So I think we don't want to lose that, because I think that when you try to shape randomness too much, you can end up with something that's really blasé. And that doesn't mean that we don't put our hands on the steering wheel a little bit, but you want to be careful not to take away the emergent stories, of like when you met the double ghoul, like not at all, or not for 10 runs, and then it came on fight number 1 of entering the new biome, or on the last possible fight before going to the mountain, whatever it is. So those are things like we don't want to sand away too much. But yeah, double ghoul is fine because we tried it, then in testing it was too hard, so we took it out. But at that point the ghouls were like, I forgot, they were doing even more crazy stress damage and whatever. And then
I was gonna say, because the double ghoul, I mean, the first time I encountered them, I was just like, what is this?
this is a toned down double ghoul. But yeah,
Double ghoul isn't the problem,
No.
as far as I see it. The problem is that you got the 2 corpses at the end when you should have had 4 ghouls. Like that's where we should be going with it,
More ghouls. More.
yeah, so those are fun. Yeah, added them back in some chance. Some things are conditional, as you've no doubt found with probably like Antiquarian, for example. Like she's more likely to show up when you're carrying a lot of treasure around. And that
Didn't
so
notice that.
Did not notice that. That would be nice to know. That would be a cool thing to know about.
yeah, so there are rules, with some of that stuff. But also, I would say shaping of the progression is something we're very much in the middle. I mean, this patch that we're about to roll out has some stuff, limited to what we could do in week 1. But
Chat, when was this interview? What was the date?
I
Didn't
think
finish
like
the game in a single week. How could you?
We didn't. We fell short of that expectation. But
yeah, so I think honestly we were a little surprised, just kind of how people are blowing through the runs. And that's a great example again of no substitute for lots of people on there. But yeah, so I think stand by. There's probably going to be some ups and downs during early access as far as shaping all that progression. But you're all doing a very valiant service by playing and dying and or just breezing through. Both of those help us. So.
Yeah, because it shows you if everybody's passing a segment that is supposed to be hard, then clearly there's an underlying issue. You did mention how the Antiquarian shows up when you have a lot of treasure. I have to ask, is there any chance there's another person that shows up when you have a lot of stuff on you, the Collector? Is he gonna be coming back at all?
there's a very good chance that we will revisit some of our favorite monsters from years past over the course of the coming months.
Wow, Chris, well done.
That's a strong maybe if I've ever heard one.
Is my E3 manicured of
Use your PR voice.
Talking point.
yeah talking point. Yes, we like those guys. He's a cool enemy. It would be a shame for him to not get a second kick at the can.
Should bring back all the most hateful enemies. I think the Fanatic needs to come back.
And then we'll end it on one last question. Unless you want to take some questions from chat. Houndmaster's dog, is he okay? You gotta tell me he's okay. You can ignore all the other ones, but the Houndmaster's dog.
It's so funny because people want to know if Reynolds okay or the dog's okay. Like, the first game is a hell time loop from which there's no escape, so nobody's okay, right? Because they can't stop arriving at the hamlet and dying at the hamlet and arriving at the hamlet forever. So the dog is alive and the dog is dead in Darkest Dungeon 1.
Is this Schrodinger's dog now? Oh my god.
This is Schrodinger's dog.
Yeah.
It's Cthulhu's dog. What are you talking about, Schrodinger's dog here? This is Cthulhu's dog.
Yeah, he does technically exist in a state of neither dead nor alive right now. But no, we wouldn't hurt any dogs in this.
It's Darkest Dungeon to have a rough first act and an easy third act, but it's not Darkest Dungeon. But it's still Darkest Dungeon to say no dogs were hurt during this game.
Franchise. Oh wait, other than the thousands of rabbit dogs.
The rabbit dogs.
That is very off-brand.
Are
There's a lot of rabbit hounds in the wheel.
Oh yeah, there was at one point in DD2 or DD1 development, the dogs had 2 actions a turn.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, we were like, oh, this could be a fun idea.
But that's what we learned.
Okay.
We learned a valuable lesson there, which is that it's awful when you get 2 to 1 on the number of turns. So if the enemies get 8 turns to your 4, or
Yeah, that's currently what happens every time I have fucking character interactions. The enemies, quote unquote, the other side, the people who are not me making decisions and controlling, are doing it like 4 times as much as I am.
6 to your 3 or whatever, there's a switch that happens, and you want to throw your monitor out the window and send us death threats. And we learned that with the dogs because you just sit there watching them give you rabies over and over again and get increasingly frustrated. And we applied that when it came to the Viscount fight in Crimson Court, because the first iteration of that we stepped over the line again, and it was like just felt a little bit too passive.
I remember like the first iteration of the Crimson Court bosses before y'all like toned them down a little, and the Baron having like, what is it, like 6.
Wait, they toned down the Crimson Court bosses? What? It's cheating. You can't tone them down. Not after I've had that experience. I want to share that experience with the world.
Turns or something,
miserable.
like something insane. He had so many.
He had a few, yeah.
And every single one of them was used to AoE your party down.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge on this game, though, is like, in DD2 early access launch is no exception, that, sometimes we go super hard and we hear about it, we Crimson Court say or whatever, and then other times we think we're going hard and people just sail through. And so it's funny even for us sometimes to figure out where that line is, of where we're being exceedingly cruel. Like 2 ghouls, I think everyone agrees is pretty darn hard, and some would argue shouldn't be in there, but then some other stuff that we think is going to be hard is.
I really wish I hadn't realized that you guys are watching me watch you in this thing now, because now it's more awkward. I just want to have natural reactions to this. It's my first time doing reaction videos, and I'm trying to have natural reactions here. So I don't know.
Trivial. So that's the challenges of game design with quite a big audience, honestly, because like obviously a lot of people have gone into Darkest Dungeon, and some find it really easy and some find it extremely hard, and it's impossible to please everyone, but we do try to put enough things in there to give at least everyone a reason to play it.
Yeah. Would you say that you've made quite the change from like the Affliction or Virtuous system that you had in DD1? Are you like happy with how the relationship system has gone so far?
You guys know my thoughts on that, chat. I don't think there should be positive and negative relationships to this game. I think there should just be relationships that generate from this, and they should have positive and negative attributes to them. And I think the player should have more decisions in kind of how those relationships arise, so that you can build interesting relationships that come with downsides as well as coming with upsides, as opposed to just this binary, you have a good thing that you're always moving for that you have no control over, versus a bad thing that you're always moving away from that you have no control over. So,
gift subs in the channel.
Thanks, Flipper, for the gifted sub.
It was interesting in the first game, we had this Affliction system with the stress, and we anticipated that we'd have to do a ton of revisions to it, but we're like, okay, we've stood it up enough, we'll launch the game, and fingers crossed, and we hardly touched it. We hardly touched that system to this day. I think we did a bit of sculpting around.
Got it right on the first try?
Yeah, and we always kind of look back on that, we're like, wow, that was a freebie, like, we'll take it. And we knew that, changing it up to be relationship-based would be.
So again, Gav, your comment, you love the idea of the relationship system. I think there's really good bones in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of balancing needed to get there, because I think right now, for example, I don't think the relationship system works at all right now.
A different type of task and have its own challenges. And so I think I'm happy with the concept. I'm happy with how we're roughly paying it off. I just think it might be one of those things that it needs time and refinement, maybe a little bit more than its kind of predecessor system did, because it is, like 4 times as complex, because you're dealing with 2 characters for every affliction, basically. So it'll be kind of cool to see, but I think it's roughly doing what we want it to do. But I don't know, Tyler, do you have any?
See, because again, to reiterate a point that we've been making all week, right? The relationship system is binary. You either have a positive or negative relationship out of it. Your only control is whether or not you move it towards the positive or the negative. and you're always incentivized as a player to move it towards the positive. And the outcomes of that are not entirely positive. They're kind of irritating outcomes, but by and large, the net gain for the party is always positive from a positive relationship. So you're left with this really weird setup where nothing you did really mattered going into that. You always are taking the same positive actions. There's no difference between runs. It's always random, but it's always the same outcome essentially. And you're always building that thing. And there's no decision. You can't be like, well, I want a relationship that involves a little bit of abuse for stress damage because I've got a good stress healer, but it gives me an upside of some extra damage or something. Like there's no refinement of those relationships from game to game. So I'm kind of hoping that gets changed up a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird. I would say not totally happy with how it launched, just because I think some things snuck through that wish we would have caught, but happy with the concept. I mean, I think the concept and the moments are what we want to. We want to create these interesting moments of like when the characters bond, right? We always felt that was like really strong right out of the gate, like when we started making this game, I guess, that there'd be these amorous moments or these like hateful, so that is cool. We like that, the more stress they get, the more irritable they get. I think like just the, you were there on the 25th, on the day before release, and all the kill stealing and all that was jacked up a bit high.
Oh yeah, like they were, so what we ended up figuring out is that if they were at a threshold of 3 stress or lower, they would never do anything negative. But the moment they went to 4 or higher, it was everything was negative, and they would never do anything positive.
And just how often they were doing it was too much. And I think that's a case where, I'd just ask people to bear with us through early access that, sometimes in testing, you don't notice some of the stuff because you're really focused on, say, the bigger picture. You're like, okay, like our runs working as a whole, is tokenized combat working, all this stuff. And so right away within like 2 days.
Tokenized combat is awesome. It's one of the take homes from this that I really, really like. The accuracy system was really unpleasant as the player. The token system is much, much nicer.
We were able to make a few adjustments that I think helped, and then we made some adjustments in this patch that I think are going to help. But the reality is that relationships are a huge part of this game, and we might need a bunch of time during early access to really dial it in. But we love the basics of it, And so
basis is strong for sure.
I think you the token system like wonderfully. I think the token system is way better than say the marking system from DD1, because marking's got
the marking system. Do I even want to open up that can of worms?
Really, really weird when monsters had multiple turns.
Right.
Weird? That's a interesting way of saying useless.
Because it could fall off too soon. Yeah.
So I'd say, I don't know, another relationship thing, I think like we want the moments to make sense, right? Like in DD1 2, we take control away from you, and that's something we're never going to not do. Like sometimes these heroes are going to do stuff, but we don't want you like thinking it doesn't make sense, or like why are they
stitch to it, right?
Yeah,
when you're just sat there and like they're chatting too much. I mean, it's obvious. You can see it happen. We've seen that feedback. We agree. But the thesis of like you can be in a great relationship, and the more stressed you get, you start ruining that relationship. That works, and it's a strong like underpinning. So like I'm happy with that. I think we're delivering on that. The idea that like you can have a fly-in.
But even that, like, okay, so what happens right now with the relationships, right? You maintain stress well, the relationship is always a positive. We always incentivize to keep stress low already. That's part of the inherent portion of the relationship management as it stands right now. Why? Why do we have relationships that look like that? How about some relationships that are like, okay, well, this relationship is blah, 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 but this person has the quirk of, is scared of cadavers or something. So in situations with a cadaver, the abusive person here who normally has this like baseline, which is okay, in this situation, they're going to generate more stress kind of deal. It just feels like there could be more interesting things that arise from that as opposed to keep stress low, relationship positive. Like, again, I don't even like the negative and positive affliction relationships anymore because I don't think it inherently adds to what we're trying to do with the game. We already know we need to manage stress. So this is supposed to be something that makes it a little bit different for that management. And it's not showing up like that yet. We'll see.
Combo Marvel Capcom style support moment. That really works well. I think what we want to do is make those moments really, really impactful, and then let some of the other ones kind of fade away just so it's not so obstructive. But yeah, we just need a little bit of time to let it mature.
Yeah, I think there's like some stuff that's super logical. Like if a character's on death's door and someone else gets a heal, I think it makes sense that character's gonna be like, what? Like, I need this. But the stuff, there's some other triggers in there that. So we're going to keep shaping those. And yeah, like I said, we made some adjustments that I think already, but then also in this upcoming patch. But we're going to be looking at feedback and taking time. Some of the stuff, I guess one of the hard parts of early access is asking for a little patience in terms of just going, hey, cool, yeah, we got the feedback and we have some ideas and now we need to actually go into it. And, the team's a little tired right now. We just went through the filing and then the push. So our kind of focus right now is, we made some improvements and fixes that we're super excited to push out. And then we're going to take a little time and look at the tons of feedback because we can't believe like more people are playing this game in the first week than bought Darkest Dungeon 1, which was honestly kind of surprising. We just thought,
Wait, total? More people are playing this game in the first week than bought the entirety of bought the first game over time. Is that true? Is that what we understand from that? That's a crazy metric, and B, that's really weird. Because wouldn't you find the people most likely to buy the sequel are the people who liked the first one?
We would roll things out and build.
Yeah.
build audience over time. But the good part there, well, there's a million good parts. We've got this really cool like feedback channel in our Discord channel, our official Discord server.
And Mons, feel free to link that up.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
please.
thanks.
And then we have a way to scrape that, and also people can give thumbs up or thumbs down on feedback. So it's actually really helpful already to see like, oh, 200 people agree with this feedback in the Discord. That's a big deal. Like that really bubbles to the top. So we're looking forward to taking a little time to catch our breaths and look at stuff too. But but there's all
Maybe the problem with balancing by committee like that and by taking that in is you're shaping it to what the average person seems to think is the best, and I'm not actually convinced that generally works out super well. So yeah, maybe as a general sense, I just hope it doesn't become too restrictive as this one doesn't get enough likes as a change,
also some no-brainer stuff, and that's the stuff we were trying to hurry up and help a little bit. But ongoing balance is it's going to take a while, but we're already excited to have data. And we've got some telemetry that we're looking at, all kinds of stuff. So that's been fun.
Yeah. The only issue I've had with the relationship system is Amoris feels more like an affliction most of the time than it does an actual benefit. Because
Is that Amorous? Is that what he's talking about?
my tank keeps falling in love with people, and then the backline has like this run specifically, the occultist has been tanking for the Hellion the entire run. Just like, hey, I realize that you're trying to lower the health on the Hellion so you can get that bonus damage, but I'm gonna tank this and go to Death Door now.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I love that though. It's cool. People in love are annoying.
Oh, I love it. Like it fits,
Yeah.
but it's definitely one of those like, this is annoying. It fits.
Mhm.
I wouldn't change it. But
But that's the sweet.
See, but I would change it. I would change it to be like, do you want your tank in love with the back? So like these events push it into a direction, but you as the player have some ability to push back on that, right? Like that would be the interesting kind of relationship building of that. This relationship, so forget for a minute negative and positive, because I already think, again, negative and positive I think are no good here, right? So let's say that we take Amorous as a relationship, right? And the upside of Amorous maybe is it stress heals when they're doing well. You get these kind of encouragement like barks that show up, right? With like stress healing is some light healing or something. And the downside is, well, this person is now stepping into harm's way that you don't want them. So the back rank is stepping into harm's way for the front rank. Okay, that's interesting because now there's an ups and downs of this, but let's not A, characterize this as a wholly positive relationship, and then B, let's give the player some ability to manipulate whether or not it's an amorous relationship or a respectful relationship or a hopeful relationship. So we as the player can push for that a little bit, like, okay, well, we're not going to use chocolates between rank 1 and rank 4. We're going to use dartboard instead, right? Like one of these deals, so that we as the player have some decisions and some impact on the type of relationship that is generated from those characters. That to me strikes me as interesting.
All right, yeah, but that's the sweet spot. It's annoying and I hate it, but I wouldn't change it. That's exactly where we want to live for the rest of our lives. Is the game, I mean, not me
Yes,
personally. I don't want
And then you have the runs. You have the runs where you couldn't avoid it. Every single place you go to, it's like you end up at the Love Shack Hotel as opposed to like, the Inn with the Doctor, which gives you like plus chance of building amorous relationships as opposed to other ones. The first couple fights you fight Cupid and Cupid's debuff is, blah, 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 this type of crap, right? So you end up with a run where it's like you couldn't avoid that amorous relationship even though you didn't want it to, and you lost the run because in the final boss, the occultist kept stepping in the way of the Hellion. Like that could be fun to a point,
live there. It sounds terrible, but yeah, that's I think where the game really comes into its own and things click. Where it's like it's a plausible and decidedly inconvenient outcome. Where you're like, I understand it, but I don't like it, but I respect it. So
Yeah,
I think that's our target.
Maybe the only thing is, we want it to feel like when you get a positive relationship, like you're excited because it's good things, and we want some random stuff to happen, sure, or some, like in those cases, like it just made thematic sense that if someone's inseparable and then someone starts giving out someone else a bunch of attention, well, there's a logical cue there that that you can kind of draw on from your personal lives. But we love those moments in DD1 where say you got a positive, you got a virtue, and this could be a game changer. So we want you to have those moments there too, where you're like, okay, he's sometimes a pain in the butt because they're in love, but man, when they come through for each other, like that could swing combat. And so I think that's like what Chris was alluding to a little bit ago, where
we also need as a player to understand the things that proc those, right? Because like the last run we just did, super ignoring. Like I'm trying to set up a mechanic, and the mechanic is a the indiscriminate science heal combined with encore. So you deliberately build debuff tokens on your character and then remove those debuff tokens to cause a larger heal, right? That was this thing we kept trying to set up. We kept getting blocked by a relationship variable that we don't know. We don't know how this behaves. I need like a definition of that relationship that says, to some degree of that. We're going to get that eventually from wiki and data mining kind of stuff, but it's annoying as a player in the meantime to be like, okay, well, even if I accept the fact that this relationship has arisen, and we'll forget about how that relationship arises for a moment, right? Hopefully we get some control over how it arises. Once it's there, it would be nice to have a better understanding of what this means. And perhaps that is thematically congruent in some way, but I'm not sure why giving extra actions to another character is inherently annoying for that particular type of relationship, for Inseparable, for example. So it would be nice to understand that a little bit more too.
We want to reduce a little of the noise and increase more of the memorable moments, and I think hopefully that'll really make that system shine, because just like DD1 was kind of really just an RPG, but about psychological elements, this one, the relationships is really core. It may not be something that it interferes with every single action or combat, but we want it to really make the tale of an interesting run, and that's what makes it Darkest Dungeon versus, I don't know, another game where that maybe doesn't have the relationship stuff.
Gotcha. So one question I do have, so I do love the hope system here, where like this is how you get your meta unlocks and stuff, and it goes up to level 50 currently. Is 50 like where you want your endpoint to be, or is that just for early access? And am I going to unlock everything?
You look like you're on track. What is this, 42?
Yeah, where are you at?
He's at 42.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, so I would say the main thing is we want there to be interesting stuff to unlock. Now, there's a content problem there because you also don't want to distribute, like, I don't know, if let's say most players aren't going to play 1,000 hours a game, so you don't necessarily want to put
don't have everything at level 50, because like,
yeah,
I think I have like 70 hours in and I'm at 41, so getting
cool. Okay.
That's interesting to note, actually.
Yeah, that's actually not too far off. I would say the early progression is a little fast for us right now. Like I want to tinker with it. We've decided not.
That's interesting. I actually think early progression is the opposite of too fast, right? Like I think maybe the what happens in terms of the number of hope levels and meta progression levels you go up in might be too fast for that. Like like the progress is you do one run, you jump up 9 levels. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But the early game is less fun, or rather the early runs are less fun because you're so limited as to what you can do, especially with trinkets, right? Trinkets are really boring in the first 2 runs or whatever, because like you can beat the game, the early access portion of the game, you beat fairly easily, even after like run 1 or run 2, but you still only have basically resist trinkets available. And that was, so perhaps meta progression like rank levels is too fast, but maybe what we need is more starting things that are a little bit different.
Not to tinker with for this patch, but that's a separate issue. And so I think 50 was trying to guess somewhere around 100 hours might take. That was just based on pre-release data. And there's some cool stuff, like we tried to put a pretty neat thing at level 50 or level 49 and stuff like that. But I would say like we want to have interesting content, and then also give you a reason to keep playing, keep grinding, even past the point when you've unlocked everything. So I don't know, I think we're going to just see how people go through early access. But, we knew it's kind of a matter of fact that some people will always reach your level cap. I mean, even the most seasoned big MMOs have this problem where they're like, okay, we weren't expecting everyone to do it in a week, but here we are. So I think right now it's really just a matter of distributing cool items. I think one thing that maybe we haven't communicated super clearly, but I hope people find is, once you've gotten to level 20 or 30, you've unlocked so many more cool things and the texture of your run changes. And I think I even saw maybe... might ask a question about trinkets, like why are there so many resistance trinkets early? Well, the truth is because a lot of cool trinkets were locked behind profile levels. So we're hoping that, like on your first couple runs, you're going to see
I haven't seen this chat. I swear this is my first time seeing this.
a lot of the same trinkets, but we hope like, once you're up in your territory, that you get the broad like catalog, if you will.
I unlocked no icon. I think that's chat's favorite. They keep yelling at me about it.
I missed one. God damn it.
No,
Okay.
Good old no icon.
Is that the
miracle
jumbo
that-
storage trunk? Is that what it was?
Yes, it's the jumbo storage trunk.
Yeah, here come the recriminations. Like, you didn't tell me there was a jumbo storage trunk. This is, I feel pretty
I
good.
was not informed about the
Yeah, I
jumbo
know,
storage
that's-
trunk. It was
I'll
not on
follow
any
the
list.
Calling the sword for that one, but we had fun, and it felt very Darkest Dungeon to even unlock.
Yeah, the funny part of this for me is not that reaction, although that reaction is very cute. The funny part is how apparently universal it is that Baru's chat is the same as you all for the same thing. You guys just, for some unknown reason, love the fact that the storage trunk is no icon. You just love that. Everyone's like, use no icon. It's pointed out every time I pick it up. It's like put in chat like 20 times in a row. It's crazy.
Works, like
I absolutely love the fact that this is like the only game I know of where you unlock bad things. You
Yeah.
unlock new debilitating diseases.
I know.
1640, right?
Well,
It's not exactly a motivator, but it adds texture. Let's just put it that way.
it definitely adds texture. I love it. Actually, I think Binding of Isaac also, like, you unlock bad things. Just like
It's like the cool thing is that the game ecosystem grows, right? And you're adding more ingredients into what could possibly happen to you. So you're increasing like possibility space that's presented to you every run.
Yeah, which is diversity of experience, which is something that I repeatedly argue for all the time in games, right? Especially roguelikes, right? Where each run is, you want each run to be as unique as it can be inside the confines of still playing that same game. We want one run to be defined by the fact we have this really cool starting perk that we get locked in, followed by another trinket that does something entirely different and flips how that character plays, followed by a disease and a relationship that now make these things also interact in yet another way. Like that kind of experience is exactly what you look for in roguelikes, right? You're looking for each thing being in the same game world with the same goals roughly, but done in an entirely different and unique way that makes it fun and replayable. You're like, wow, that was so cool that one time I got the character with X quirk with Y trinket versus Z fights, and those three things together with the combination of this extra relationship made this run really unique and memorable. That's exactly what you want.
And sometimes that means, you know, adding on the good side and sometimes on the bad side, but ultimately you're in for a richer experience the further you are into the profile stuff.
Yeah. But thank you again for this. This has been really nice. Y'all have anything y'all want to say to, I guess, to the 14,000 people who are watching the interview?
I just thank you for streaming. I'm really pleased that, you know, it's a real pleasure for us to be able to watch people play and enjoy and consume the game, and to know that there's an audience out there who is watching you play it is even cooler. So I think we're excited to maintain and build this game, and you know, the team, and we're in it for the long haul. Really want to make this into something strong, good, replayable. You know, we believe in it, and hopefully that comes through. And hang on to your hats, or don't hang on to the middle and wait for 1.0. You can do either of those things.
Yeah, thanks for helping us ascend the Twitch homepage. Baru. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, man, for sure.
There was a little watch party going on in the office, and yeah, you pulled a big audience, and it was super exciting for the team because a lot of our team, well, most of our team, came on after DD1 Core was made, and they're all DD.
Chat, how hard do you think this portion is for me to watch?
Fans, like in some cases they were part of the community, but other times they were just colleagues we had in the industry that wanted to come work on this, and people were just stoked. I mean, it's always really gratifying to see your game come out. Well, unless it's a total turd, then you want to crawl under a bench somewhere. But you know, we know there's lots of things to fix, but it was pretty rad to be able to watch you experience it and see your audience, you know, come along for the ride. So we're very conscious of our responsibilities to keep supplying good game to everyone. But it's been a fun week.
Yeah. The wonderment, like to watch somebody unpack it, is very, very validating. I think that's the most special thing. And I think that's what like Twitch in particular does for me, is just like get to watch people explore what you made. And
to reiterate that point earlier, that's exactly true of me when I make content as well. It's exactly that experience when you're releasing YouTube videos or guide videos. You're like, man, I wonder how the audience is going to take this.
Fucking die and get mad and figure it out. And that whole process of like someone just playing with the toys that you made is really, really cool. And I think, yeah, the whole team was crowded around the TV and super eager to watch, and you were a huge part of that. So thanks.
No problem. I'm glad I could share this with everybody. Like, as I said before, it's like there are games that like I get excited for and I set an expectation for, but they usually don't meet the mark. This one definitely went above and beyond. Like, even though it's in early access, I know what you have planned. Like, it's good. It's good. So thank you.
That's good to hear. Thank you. We've taken some weird turns on this journey, and it's nice to see you enjoying it for sure.
My only thing is you got to bring back slimes. I love cytokinesis and multiplying and making a never-ending fight. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I just want a fight that just never ends. Cytokinesis.
All day.
Another slime.
Just jujubes all day.
Yeah, maybe we can tie that into the slime mold somehow.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody who's watching.
Absolutely. That should be how slime mold works, chat. Every once in a while, when you throw out a slime mold, you should have to fight the slimes.
Yeah.
And the number of slimes you should have to fight is the number of slimes that you have thrown out in between the last time you fought them. So like if you're constantly throwing that item out and you loot like 10 of them a run, like every like 10 runs, you end up with like 100 round slime fight.
All
right. Pretty cool. Nice to see the reactions of the devs to their own product. Nice to hear the ideas of that. A lot of those things, it sounds like a lot of the things that we are, that I am and our community seems to be fixated on are things that are either under watch or looking to be developed anyways. I think this relationship system, again, has the potential to be really good, but at the moment is in a pretty rough spot. So I'm really hoping to see. So we're going to do patch note review, and then maybe I'll do kind of an overall like thoughts of that combined with this. So